Democrats lose election after election in the midterms of 1874 to Democrats who promised first to
Party in the House of Representatives for the first time since...
Oh, so the Republicans was represented by a root, a cock.
State governments in Alabama, Texas, and Arkansas. Reconstruction's future was perilous. The fight wasn't over. In 1874, congressional districts with majority black populations elected leaders like Robert Smalls and John Lynch. They would face stiff opposition as members of the minority party.
The Democratic majority in the House of Representatives means no more money for Reconstruction initiatives. So, if there will be political troubles around election time, if the Ku Klux Klan will suddenly reawaken and begin intimidating voters at the polls, murdering black people on the roads, night riding to terrorize blacks into submission, there will be no initiative coming out of Washington.
Was there a sense of desperation because of the reversal of the 1874 election?
What had been a 100-seat majority for Republicans turned into roughly an 80-seat majority for Democrats. Coming into the new Congress, we had a long lame duck session of about 3 months. The clock is ticking. African Americans know that this is really probably going to be the last shot at a far-reaching civil rights bill.
It prohibited discrimination in public transportation, juries, public accommodations such as hotels, and public education. Immediately when the Civil Rights Bill came to the floor, Southern Democrats and Northern Democrats alike railed against the bill. They believed that it was unconstitutional.
Opponents of the bill thought the U.S. government had no business telling the proprietors of restaurants or the people who run railroads who they could admit. These are private businesses, and they can decide who their clientele is.
The critics believed that it was not about non-discrimination. They saw it as about social equality. And their view is that social equality could not be legislated. It couldn't be enforced. It shouldn't be imposed.
This is pushing integration that is unnatural.
You're going to force a white person to ride next to a black person. The next thing you know, you're going to force a white person to have a black person over for dinner or interracial marriage.
So they were apoplectic about the idea that they had to protect their whiteness, and in particular, protect their white women against this exposure to African Americans.
Near the end of the first full day of debate, most members were given 20 minutes each to speak. And Alexander Stephens of Georgia, former Confederate vice president, stood up feebly because he was confined to a wheelchair and requested a full hour to speak. And Republican leadership agreed as long as Robert Brown Elliott also had a full hour to provide his rebuttal. Stephens, leaning precariously on a big stack of papers, gives this long, monotone, prepared speech in which he goes over the unconstitutional arguments for the Civil Rights Bill. When he sits down, it's late. George Hoare of Massachusetts says, well, you know what, maybe we won't have Elliott speak today. Maybe he can go first thing tomorrow. And that may have been strategic, because word got out that Robert Elliott was going to provide the rebuttal to the former vice president of the Confederacy. The next day when Elliott takes the floor, the galleries are packed with African American observers. Reporters had shown up. The whole chamber is just filled with people. Elliott gives this really booming delivery.
The Constitution of a free government ought always be construed in favor of human rights. I cannot and I will not forget that the welfare and rights of my whole race in this country are involved. The race whom he spurned and trampled on are here to meet him in debate and to demand the rights which are enjoyed by their former oppressors.
When Elliott finishes, the whole room erupts into booming applause. People line up to shake his hand. This is a real symbolic moment. The old planter class appears feeble and on its way out, and this dark-skinned, suave, intelligent African-American man represented the way forward.
Congress passed the Civil Rights Act.
Hold up, y'all.
There was a clause that was strict
forward.
Hold up, y'all.
Planter class appears feeble.
I just gotta get his name.
Are here to meet him in debate. And that the welfare
Give me
and
1 second,
free
y'all.
government.
Reporters had shown up. The whole chamber is just filled with Confederacy. The next day when Elliot takes the floor.
Hold up, y'all. I just
word
want to get
got
his
out
name.
That Robert Elliot.
Robert
was
Elliott.
going
All
to
right.
Free and right, the right.
Sign up.
Rights Act. But there was a clause that was stripped from the final act, and that was about education. Americans were not ready for that kind of equality in education yet, and apparently wouldn't be for many, many more years.
While Congress managed to get the Civil Rights Act of 1875 across the finish line, another branch of government blunted the reach of the 14th Amendment. In 1876, the Supreme Court announced its ruling in United States versus Cruikshank, in the courthouse in Colfax, Louisiana.
The decision which is handed down in Cruikshank is one of the most remarkably feeble-minded and disastrous decisions that the United States Supreme Court has ever handed down. And the reasoning ran like this. The 14th Amendment was only intended to restrain states from depriving U.S. citizens of the privileges and immunities that they're supposed to enjoy. But what went on in the Colfax Massacre, first of all, was not state action. It was not the state of Louisiana. But this was, in fact, merely individuals.
It was a local crime. Private violence is the business of the states. And if they are not taking care of it, that's just too bad.
Mobs of whites decide to kill you. Have you been denied your right? Well, the Supreme Court decided that you've not been denied your right if you were murdered, as long as it's just private individuals, whether individually or collectively,
That's
that
crazy.
are interfering with your rights. That's not a federal case.
That's crazy.
While the Cruikshank decision didn't close the door on possible future prosecutions, it narrowed the pathways for enforcing the 14th Amendment.
But it stood between the Redeemers and their ultimate goal, which was terrorize African Americans so completely that across the South, hundreds of thousands who had been registered and had been politically active would be reduced to a few hundreds in many of the jurisdictions that they once actually dominated.
Grant saw that support for Reconstruction was eroding, so he decided to pull back on military interventions in the South to enhance his party's chances in the North. With the next presidential election months away, Washingtonians, black and white, came together to honor a past president, Abraham Lincoln. For one man, the occasion afforded an unprecedented national platform for a call to action.
On April 14, 1876, this plaza near Capitol Hill was teeming with people, including members of both houses of Congress, the Supreme Court justices, and the President of the United States, Ulysses S. Grant. The crowd had gathered here on the 11th anniversary of Lincoln's assassination to witness the unveiling of this monument.
So if you don't know who this guy is,
the Emancipation
like his whole career, Lewis Garrett is breaking down black history. He has so many different like PBS docuseries. I'm talking about they may be 8, 10, 12 shows long. 2, 3 seasons. He have another one called A River Runs Through. Really good. This is the reconstruction of America after the war. So really good thing. Yep, Henry Louis Garrett, a phenomenal. Like he goes in depth. He doesn't leave anything out, yo. Any docuseries you can see from him, check it out. Like, I'm surprised he haven't won awards for this. I think it's on purpose, but I've been watching his docuseries for years. Like since I come, Many Rivers to Cross is phenomenal. You hear me? Many Rivers to Cross is phenomenal. I've been watching his series since I come home from prison. Like it's like he dropped one every so many years. You hear me? But if you ever see his, check him out. His name Henry Louis Garrick Jr. I'm talking any docuseries he have on PBS, watch it. You hear me? And they, I promise you, they all not the same. They all cover different one. Trap, you should visit his series at Four Seasons Hotel in Canal at the. You know I did already. You know I did. You know I did. You know I did. My bad, y'all. I didn't see the comments because I was just locked in. You hear me? But phenomenal. Anytime he drops something, he's gonna drop it on PBS. It's gonna be phenomenal. But I'm telling you, that Many Rivers to Cross, it's gonna blow you. Not in a bad way, but you gonna just be like, yo, why didn't they tell me this? You know what I'm saying? Like he is phenomenal. He's my go-to person.
Republicans convinced Southern governments to declare enough votes invalid to swing the Electoral College.
Man, I ain't gotta say no Diddy, man. I'm from New Orleans, man. I'm talking about Black history, man. If dick on your mind, you out your mind, man.
Rally their voters under the slogan "Tilden or Blood." They were real fears of civil war. Grant started to call in troops to guard Washington. He said either party can afford to lose an election, but we as a people cannot afford to have a presidential election that is tainted by false or illegal results. Congress created a...
I got the name of this pinned, and you'll see who it is, y'all.
By one vote.
Democrats predictably cried foul.
Hayes was referred to as Brother Fraud v. Hayes. He was called his fraudulency.
February, as Inauguration Day neared, the election still remained undecided. Republicans and Democrats came together and cut a deal. Hayes is inaugurated as President of the United States.
It's hard to imagine, in the moment of an election, a party trading a presidential victory, unless it means protecting their way of life.
I guess I don't know what you mean by design. I kind of get lost in it. That can mean so many things.
It was more important to reinstate that power structure than it was to win the White House.
Hayes promises white Southerners that he will leave the South to conduct its own affairs, unimpeded, and that the Negro problem will be its to solve.
The federal troops would stop enforcing the kinds of reforms that had marked the Reconstruction era. The southern states had been redeemed.
I was telling my girl the other day, I told her, I said,
whoever had been elected,
the black experience in the South was so much different than the black experience up north.
Because Northerners had decided to move on.
To creating this new America.